You can't walk out of fate. That's what they tell you. That's what Corinne Reyes believed as she slipped stolen scrubs over her hospital gown in the pre-dawn darkness of Mercy General. Her ribs screamed with every movement, but pain was temporary. Captivity was not. He was getting out. Before the doctors returned with their questions. Before the police showed up with their reports. Before whoever had put her here came back to finish the job. Corinne didn't need saving. She'd been saving herself since she was 16. The emergency exit beckoned, red letters glowing like a promise of freedom. She pushed through, tasting cold November air, her heartbeat thundering in relief. Then she saw them. 30 massive wolves sat in perfect formation across the parking lot. Silver-furred. Moving. Their eyes glowing ice blue in the darkness like judgment itself. And standing at the center, a man who shouldn't exist. 6.5 feet of ancient power wrapped in a crimson cape. Eyes burning cerulean. The air around him thrummed with dominance that made her wounded body want to kneel. Going somewhere, mate? His voice was winter and authority and inevitability. Lycan King Lloyd Aldridge had found her. And he wasn't letting her leave. Chapter 1. You can't cage what was born wild. Corinne's fingers closed around the broken piece of asphalt she'd grabbed when she hit the ground. Not much of a weapon, but she'd worked with less. I said, she repeated, pushing herself to her knees despite her screaming ribs, I'm leaving. Lloyd Aldridge didn't move. Didn't need to. The 30 wolves surrounding them shifted forward half a step, and the message was crystal clear. Try it. You're bleeding through your bandages. His voice was infuriatingly calm, the kind of calm that came from never being disobeyed. You have 3 cracked ribs, a concussion and internal bruising. You'll collapse before you reach the street. Then I'll collapse on my own terms. Corinne lurched to her feet, swaying. The world tilted. She locked her knees through sheer spite. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or was that amusement? Before we continue the story, please tell me in the comment section where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you are hooked in and enjoy the story, because tomorrow I have another wonderfully interesting story for you and I don't want you to miss it for anything. Stubborn. He took one step forward. Just one. But the air pressure changed like a storm rolling in. I can work with stubborn. You're not working with anything. I don't know you. I don't know what you think gives you the right to. The bond hit her mid-sentence. It slammed into her chest like a freight train made of lightning and honey and want. Every nerve ending in her body lit up, screaming mine, mine, mine in a voice that wasn't hers but somehow came from the deepest part of her DNA. She could feel him, his heart rate, his breathing, the coiled power thrumming just beneath his skin. Could feel the predatory satisfaction radiating off him as he watched her face go slack with shock. No. The word ripped out of her. No. Absolutely not. You feel it. Not a question. Lloyd's eyes blazed brighter, the blue intensifying until it was almost painful to look at. The mate bond. You're mine, Corinne Reyes. How did he know her name? How did he? I'm nobody's. She threw the chunk of asphalt at his face. He caught it one-handed without blinking. The wolves growled in unison, a sound that rattled her bones. That, Lloyd said softly, dangerously, was unwise. He moved faster than anything that size should move. 1 second he was 10 feet away. The next, his hand was around her wrist, gentle but utterly immovable. His thumb pressed against her pulse point and another wave of the bond rolled through her, warmer this time, almost soothing. She tried to jerk away. Her body betrayed her, leaning into his touch. Let go. No. He pulled her closer and she hated how steady she felt in his gravity. You're coming with me. You'll heal. You'll learn. And eventually you'll stop fighting what we both know is inevitable. I'll die first. His smile was all wolf. You'll try. Then he lifted her, just scooped her up like she weighed nothing, and Corinne's world exploded into motion. She fought. God, she fought. Clawing, kicking, landing an elbow to his jaw that should have dropped a normal man. Lloyd didn't even grunt. Just kept walking toward a black SUV that had appeared from nowhere, his pack flowing around them like a living barrier. Behind them, hospital staff were flooding out the emergency exit, shouting questions, reaching for phones. A security guard pulled his taser. One of the wolves, a massive gray female, turned and looked at him. Just looked. The guard dropped the taser and backed away. This is kidnapping, Corinne snarled, still writhing in Lloyd's arms. I'll have you arrested. You'll be safe. He deposited her in the SUV's backseat with surprising care, then slid in beside her, blocking the door. The locks engaged with a terminal click. The people who put you in that hospital are still hunting you. You're safer with me. I don't need your protection. I know. His eyes met hers, and for just a second she saw past the dominance to something else. Something that looked almost like understanding. You've been protecting yourself for a long time. You're good at it. But you don't have to anymore. That scared her more than the wolves. More than the kidnapping. More than the impossible bond trying to weld itself to her soul. Because a part of her, small, terrified, buried deep, wanted to believe him. The SUV pulled away from Mercy General, leaving chaos in its wake. Corinne pressed her face against the window, watching her last chance at freedom disappear. She'd escaped worse cages than this. She'd escaped this one too. Chapter 2. The castle materialized from the mountain fog like something out of a nightmare dressed as a fairy tale. Stone walls that had probably seen centuries rose against the dawn sky, all Gothic spires and narrow windows that looked less like architectural choices and more like arrow slits. Which they probably were. The forest pressed close on all sides, dense and dark and absolutely crawling with wolves. Corinne had counted at least 50 sets of glowing eyes tracking their SUV up the winding mountain road. No escape route there. Welcome home, Lloyd said, and she wanted to punch the satisfaction out of his voice. This isn't my home. This is a really elaborate kidnapping. Protective custody. Before we continue the story, please tell me in the comments section where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you are hooked in and enjoy the story, because tomorrow I have another wonderfully interesting story for you and I don't want you to miss it for anything. Pretty words for the same crime. The SUV stopped in a courtyard that could have fit 3 of her old apartment buildings. Corinne's door opened, not Lloyd this time, but a woman who moved with the same predatory grace. Tall, dark-skinned, with silver streaking through her close-cropped hair and eyes that assessed Corinne like a problem to be solved. Lady Corinne, the woman said, and Corinne hated the title immediately. I'm Vera, head of the King's Guard. I'll show you to your quarters. I'm not staying long enough to need quarters. Vera's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. We'll see. The room they gave her was obscene. Bedroom the size of a basketball court with a 4-poster bed draped in silk floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the forest. A bathroom with a tub that could double as a swimming pool. And a walk-in closet already stocked with clothes that would probably fit her perfectly. The kind of prison cell that cost more than most people made in a year. Corinne walked straight to the windows. Locked. Of course. 3 stories up, sheer stone wall below. He checked the bathroom window. Same story. The door had no visible lock, but when she tried it, the handle wouldn't turn. The door will open once you've rested, Vera said from the hallway. King's orders. You need to heal. The king can, but Vera's footsteps were already retreating. Corinne stood in the center of her golden cage and did what she'd learned to do at 16 when her mother's boyfriend had locked her in the basement. She got to work. The windows wouldn't open, but the frames were old. She used a letter opener from the antique desk to work at the seal. Patience learned from a dozen other escapes, keeping her hands steady. 2 hours. That's how long it took to pry one window open far enough to squeeze through. The 3-story drop didn't scare her. The drain pipe bolted to the wall looked solid enough. Corinne had climbed down worse. She made it 15 feet before the wolves appeared below. Not attacking. Just sitting there. Watching. Waiting. A dozen of them positioned directly beneath her like the world's furriest safety net. Or firing squad. You're persistent. Lloyd's voice drifted up from the courtyard. He was leaning against the castle wall, arms crossed, looking like he'd been there the whole time. I admire that. Call them off. No. Her hands were starting to cramp. The drain pipe groaned ominously. You'll fall, Lloyd said, and you'll break something else. Come down. On your own feet or in my arms, your choice. I hate you. I know. He was smiling. He could hear it. But you'll still come down. The drain pipe made a sound like tearing metal. Corinne looked at the wolves below, at the impossible distance to the forest, at the man who stood between her and freedom. The mate bond pulsed warm in her chest, trying to convince her that down there in his arms was exactly where she belonged. He climbed back up. Lloyd was waiting at her window, having somehow climbed 3 stories in the time it took her to admit defeat. He offered his hand. She ignored it and crawled through on her own, landing hard enough to make her ribs scream. "The drain pipe needs replacing," she said through gritted teeth. His laugh was low and genuine. "I'll have someone look at it. Don't bother. I'll find another way out." "I know you will." He moved toward the door, paused. "That's what makes this interesting." The lock clicked behind him. Corinne collapsed on the obscenely comfortable bed and stared at the ceiling, already planning her next escape. Chapter 3. Lloyd gave her exactly 1 day to sulk before he showed up at breakfast with a file folder and an expression that meant business. Corinne was halfway through her 3rd cup of coffee, the only thing in this entire stone prison worth keeping, when he slid into the chair across from her. The dining room was ridiculous, all vaulted ceilings and tapestries depicting wolves hunting things that looked uncomfortably human-shaped. She'd chosen the smallest table, the one farthest from the door. He'd found her anyway. "We need to talk." "No, we don't." She didn't look up from her coffee. "You need to let me leave. That's the only conversation worth having. The Shadowborn clan put you in that hospital." He opened the folder, pushed a photograph across the table. "Recognize him?" Before we continue the story, please tell me in the comments section where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you are hooked in and enjoy the story, because tomorrow I have another wonderfully interesting story for you and I don't want you to miss it for anything. He didn't want to look. Looking meant engaging, and engaging meant acknowledging that maybe, possibly, she needed information. But her eyes betrayed her, dropping to the photo. The man staring back had been handsome once, before something had rearranged his face into a permanent snarl. Yellow eyes. Scars tracking from temple to jaw. "He was at the bar," Corinne heard herself say. "The night I got jumped. He was watching me. His name is Marcus Thorne. Second in command of a rogue Lycan faction that's been trying to destabilize my territory for 3 years." Lloyd's finger tapped another photo, this one of her, unconscious in a hospital bed, taken through a window. "They're still watching you. They know you're my mate. That makes you a target." The coffee turned to ash in her mouth. "I didn't ask to be your anything. The bond doesn't ask permission." He leaned forward, and against her will, Corinne felt that pull again, the invisible thread trying to tie her soul to his. "It just is. You felt it at the hospital. You feel it now. Fighting it only makes it worse." "Then I'll fight forever." Something flickered in his eyes. Frustration maybe. Or respect. "You don't understand what you're refusing. The mate bond isn't ownership. It's partnership. Protection. Power shared, not taken." "Sounds like a pretty speech you've given before." "I've never had a mate before." The words came out quiet, raw. "I've waited 200 years, Corinne. I'd started to think I'd wait forever. Then I felt you bleeding, terrified, alone, and every instinct I have screamed to get to you. To protect you. To claim you. I don't need protection." "I know." His smile was sharp. "You proved that by climbing down a drain pipe with 3 cracked ribs. But what you need and what's coming for you aren't the same thing." Corinne shoved back from the table. Paced to the window. Beyond the glass, wolves patrolled the grounds in patterns too perfect to be random. A living fortress. A cage wearing a crown. "Let me prove it," she said finally. "Prove what?" "That I can protect myself. Give me a trial period. 1 month. Train me if you want, test me, whatever. But at the end of 30 days, if I can prove I don't need your protection, you let me go." The silence stretched so long she thought he'd refuse outright. "And if you fail?" "I won't." "If you fail," he repeated, steel underneath the velvet, "you stop fighting the bond. You accept your place here. As my mate. As queen." The word hit like a slap. "I'm nobody's queen." "Then prove you can survive without being one." Lloyd stood, moved to the window beside her. Close enough that she could feel his heat, the bond singing with proximity. 30 days. You train with my best fighters. You learn our world, our enemies, our laws. At the end we stage a scenario, real danger, real stakes. Survive it on your own and I'll let you walk away. You'll actually let me go?" His jaw clenched. "I'll hate every second of watching you leave. The bond will make it feel like dying. But yes. If you prove you don't need me, I won't keep you prisoner." He searched his face for the lie, the trick, the trap. Found only grim sincerity and something that looked like hope wearing armor. Deal. He offered his hand. She stared at it, knowing that touching him would make the bond flare, would make walking away in 30 days even harder. He shook it anyway. His fingers closed around hers, warm and sure, and the bond pulsed between them like a second heartbeat. Lloyd's eyes flashed cerulean. 30 days, he said. Don't make me regret this. Regret is all you're getting. But she didn't pull her hand away as fast as she could have. Chapter 4. The beta who showed up at dawn was built like a brick wall wrapped in leather and bad attitude. Name's Cade. He didn't offer his hand, just looked Corinne up and down with the expression of someone evaluating a particularly disappointing purchase. I'm supposed to teach you not to die. Low bar, but here we are. Charming. Do all the King's people have such sparkling personalities? Only the ones who think this is a waste of time. Cade turned toward the training grounds, a massive courtyard behind the castle where other wolves were already running drills. You've got 4 broken ribs, no combat training, and 30 days to learn what takes most Lycans 30 years. So let's stop pretending this ends with anything except you getting hurt. Corinne smiled, the kind that had gotten her through juvie and 3 foster homes. I've been underestimated before. Usually works out badly for everyone except me. Something shifted in Cade's expression. Not quite respect but close. See. Run the perimeter. 4 miles. Try not to pass out. She made it 3 miles before her ribs forced her to walk the last stretch, but she finished. Cade was waiting at the end, stopwatch in hand. 28 minutes. That's terrible. That's with cracked ribs and a concussion. Shadowborn won't care about your excuses. But he tossed her a water bottle. Tomorrow, 26 minutes. Now let's talk about what you can actually do. Before we continue the story, please tell me in the comments section where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you are hooked in and enjoy the story, because tomorrow I have another wonderfully interesting story for you and I don't want you to miss it for anything. What followed was the most honest conversation Corinne had experienced since Lloyd kidnapped her. Cade didn't sugarcoat. Lycans were faster, stronger, healed quicker, and could rip through flesh like paper. Fighting one head-on was suicide. So you're saying I'm useless? I'm saying you're human. Cade circled her like she was a puzzle. Which means you think different. Lycans rely on instinct, smell, hearing, pack dynamics. You rely on something we've mostly forgotten, pure stubborn innovation. He spent the next week proving it. Teaching her not to fight like a Lycan, but to fight like something they wouldn't expect. Improvised weapons. Pressure points that worked even on supernatural bodies. Using environment and psychology instead of strength. You're never winning a fair fight, Cade said during a particularly brutal sparring session. So don't fight fair. By week 2, Corinne had stopped wanting to murder him. By week 3, she'd almost call it respect. It was during a break, both of them sprawled in the grass, sweating and exhausted, that she asked about the Shadowborn clan. Rogues. Cade's voice went flat. Lycans who rejected pack law, decided power mattered more than honor. Marcus Thorne used to be one of ours before he turned. Now he builds his army by turning humans without consent, breaking every law we have. Turning humans? You mean making them into Lycans? Yeah. Except force turns almost always go wrong. The human either dies or goes insane. Doesn't matter to Marcus. He just needs bodies. Corinne sat up, something clicking into place. If he's turning humans illegally, there'd be records. Missing persons reports. Patterns. We've looked. Found nothing. Because you're looking like Lycans. Her mind was already racing, pulling threads from her old life. The one before the hospital, before Lloyd, when she'd worked as a data analyst for a legal firm. You're checking supernatural databases, territory logs, pack communications. But if he's taking humans, the trail would be in human systems. Police reports. Hospital admissions. Medical examiner records. Cade stared at her. Then he pulled out his phone. Say that again. 20 minutes later, Corinne was sitting in Lloyd's study with access to databases she definitely shouldn't have, cross-referencing missing persons with unexplained animal attacks within a 100-mile radius of known Shadowborn sightings. The pattern emerged like bones from shallow graves. 17 disappearances in 6 months. All young, all physically fit, all last seen near the same industrial district on the outskirts of the city. The district Lloyd's wolves had avoided because it was technically neutral territory. They're not hunting randomly, Corinne said, pointing to the map she'd built. They're selecting. And this warehouse. She tapped a location where 3 separate victim trails converged. This is where they're taking them. Lloyd stood behind her chair, close enough that the bond hummed warm between them. How did you find this? Guess I'm human. I know how human systems work. She turned to face him. Your people are good at supernatural threats. But this is my world. Let me help. His hand came to rest on the back of her chair, not quite touching her. This is exactly why you need to stay. Why you'd be invaluable as. Don't. She stood, putting distance between them. This doesn't change our deal. I'm helping because people are dying. Not because I'm accepting that bond. But when she looked at the map, at the pattern only she could see, Corinne felt something shift. Not the bond, something else. Purpose maybe. Or the first crack in her armor. Chapter 5. The nightmare came on night 23. Corinne woke up choking on phantom smoke, her mother's voice still echoing in her ears. I can't do this anymore. You're 16. You'll figure it out. The sound of the apartment door closing. The silence that followed, louder than any scream. She was in Lloyd's castle, not that basement studio. Safe. Supposedly. But her heart didn't know the difference between then and now, between abandonment and protection. The bond pulsed, concerned. She felt Lloyd wake 3 floors away, his attention snapping to her like a searchlight. Go back to sleep, she thought at it viciously. The bond didn't listen. Footsteps in the hallway 2 minutes later. A soft knock. I'm fine. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Your heart rate says otherwise. Lloyd's voice through the door, careful. Can I come in? No. Silence. Then, I'll wait out here then. In case you need anything. Something about that. The offer without demand, the patience without pressure, cracked something in her chest. Corinne stared at the door for a full minute before she opened it. Before we continue the story, please tell me in the comment section where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you are hooked in and enjoy the story, because tomorrow I have another wonderfully interesting story for you and I don't want you to miss it for anything. Lloyd sat against the wall across from her room, still wearing sleep pants and nothing else, his bare chest marked with scars that told stories of a violence she'd only glimpsed. He looked up when the door opened, cerulean eyes soft in the darkness. Bad dream. Memory. She slid down the doorframe, sitting across from him in the hallway like they were kids at a sleepover instead of king and captive. My mom left when I was 16. Just walked out one day because being a parent was too hard. I came home from school to a note and an empty apartment. Lloyd said nothing. Just listened with the kind of attention that felt like being seen. I learned fast. You can't count on anyone except yourself. The foster system shuffled me around. Some homes were okay. Some weren't. I left at 18 with $300 and a bus ticket. Built a life from nothing because I had to. Corinne picked at the hem of her sleep shirt. Then I met Daniel. Your ex. By mistake. The laugh that escaped was broken glass. He was stable. Reliable. Said all the right things about building a future together. I let myself believe it. Let myself need someone for the first time since mom left. What happened? I got sick. Really sick. Pneumonia that turned into something worse. Was in the hospital for 2 weeks, couldn't work, couldn't pay rent. Corinne's hands clenched. He left while I was still on 4 antibiotics. Cleaned out our joint account and moved in with someone who wasn't a financial burden. Found out later he'd been planning it for months, just waiting for the right excuse. He's fortunate I didn't know about him, Lloyd said quietly, and there was something in his voice that promised violence. I would have made him regret having functioning kneecaps. Despite everything, Corinne almost smiled. The point is, I learned the lesson twice. People leave. People give up when things get hard. The only person I can trust is me. That's why you keep running. That's why I need to be able to run. She met his eyes across the hallway. You say you'll protect me, that the bond means forever. But I've heard forever before. It has an expiration date. Lloyd shifted and suddenly he was closer. Not crowding, just present. I'm not them. I'm not your mother or your ex or anyone who made you believe you weren't worth staying for. You don't know that. I'm 200 years old, Corinne. I've had lovers who left, allies who betrayed me, people I trusted who chose power over loyalty. I know what abandonment tastes like. His hand reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her wrist where her pulse hammered. The mate bond isn't a promise I'm making. It's a fact written into the universe. You could hate me for the next century and I would still choose you. Every day. Every breath. That's not poetry, it's biology and magic and something bigger than either of us. That's terrifying. I know. His thumb traced circles over her pulse point, and the bond sang between them warmer than it had ever been. But maybe being terrified together is better than being safe alone. Corinne wanted to argue. Wanted to pull away, reinforce her walls, prove that she didn't need this, didn't need him. But the nightmare still clung to her skin, and Lloyd's presence pushed it back like dawn burning away fog. I'm still leaving after 30 days, she said, but the words lacked conviction. We'll see. Lloyd smiled, soft and devastating. Stay with me tonight. Stay. I'll take the chair. You take the bed. But let me be here. He should have said no. Instead, Corinne nodded and for the first time in 17 years, let someone else stand guard while she slept. Chapter 6. The conclave arrived on day 25 with enough posturing to sink a battleship. Corinne watched from the castle's upper gallery as black SUVs disgorged alphas from 5 territories, each one radiating the kind of power that made the air vibrate. Lloyd had warned her this morning, his hand lingering on her shoulder. They're coming to assess you. To decide if you're worthy of standing beside me. I'm not standing beside you. I'm leaving in 5 days. His smile had been sad. Humor me anyway. Now she stood in a dress Vera had insisted on, midnight blue silk that made her look like she belonged in this world of ancient power and supernatural politics. He hated how good it felt. Hated more that Lloyd's eyes had gone molten when he saw her. The meeting took place in the Great Hall, a room designed to intimidate. Vaulted ceilings, stone walls hung with tapestries of past battles. A throne that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of obsidian. Lloyd sat there now, Corinne positioned at his right hand on a chair that was definitely smaller than his but still too throne-like for comfort. Before we continue the story, please tell me in the comment section where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you are hooked in and enjoy the story, because tomorrow I have another wonderfully interesting story for you and I don't want you to miss it for anything. The visiting alphas arranged themselves in a semicircle. Corinne recognized the power dynamics immediately. 2 allies flanking Lloyd's position, 3 unknowns in the center, radiating carefully controlled hostility. So, drawled the woman at center, tall and blonde with eyes like Arctic ice. This is the human who thinks she can be queen of the Northern Territory. Alpha Celeste of the Frost Ridge Pack. Lloyd had briefed Corinne on her old bloodline, older grudges, and a daughter she'd been positioning as Lloyd's mate for the past decade. I don't think anything, Corinne said pleasantly. I'm just visiting. Celeste's smile was all teeth. How immodest. Tell me, little human, what exactly qualifies you to stand in a position that should go to someone of actual worth? Can you shift? Track prey for miles? Defend this territory when enemies come calling? No. But I can do math, which apparently puts me ahead of whoever taught you diplomatic protocol. The room went silent. Lloyd's hand tightened on his armrest. Whether in warning or suppressed laughter, Corinne couldn't tell. Excuse me. Celeste's voice dropped to dangerous. You walked into your ally's home and immediately insulted his mate. That's either breathtakingly stupid or a calculated power play. Corinne leaned forward. Given that you brought 3 territories who've been lobbying against Lloyd's trade agreements, I'm guessing calculated. So let me save us all some time. I'm not threatened by you. You should be. Why? Because you're older, stronger, can turn into a wolf. Corinne stood and the bond flared as Lloyd's attention sharpened. I've survived things that would break most people. I've built a life from nothing twice. And in the 3 weeks I've been here, I've found vulnerabilities in your security, identified the Shadowborn's base of operations, and trained hard enough to make your beta quit complaining about wasted time. What have you done lately besides show up uninvited to insult people? One of the allied alphas, Marcus of the Ironwood Pack, made a sound that might have been a laugh. Celeste's eyes flashed gold. You dare. She dares because she's right. Lloyd's voice cut through the tension like a blade. And because insulting my mate in my house is a fast way to find yourself persona non grata in this territory. She's human. She's mine. Lloyd stood and the temperature in the room plummeted. And she's done more for this territory in 3 weeks than you've managed in 3 decades of political maneuvering. If you'd like to challenge that assessment, we can take this outside. Celeste held his stare for a long moment, then deliberately looked away, the Lycan equivalent of backing down. I meant no disrespect to you, my king. Just to me, Corinne said. Which is disrespect to him. See how that works. Marcus laughed outright this time. I like her. She's got spine. Too much spine, muttered one of Celeste's allies. Just enough, Lloyd corrected, and his hand found Corinne's, a public claiming that sent ripples through the assembly. Any other concerns about my mate's qualifications? Silence. Excellent. Let's discuss the Shadowborn situation. Corinne, present your findings. She spent the next hour walking them through the data. Missing persons, attack patterns, the warehouse location. Watched their skepticism shift to grudging respect as the scope of her discovery became clear. By the end, even Celeste was taking notes. When the conclave finally left, Lloyd pulled Corinne into an alcove off the Great Hall. That was stupid, reckless, going to get me killed. Magnificent. His hands framed her face and the bond sang between them. You just held your own against 5 alphas. Most humans would have cowered. I don't cower. I know. His smile was fierce, proud. Pie Queen. I'm not. But the protest died as Lloyd kissed her, and for once Corinne didn't fight the bond, pulling her closer. 5 days left. It was starting to feel like not nearly enough time. Chapter 7. The attack came at midnight on day 28, 2 days before Corinne's trial was supposed to end. She woke to alarms shrieking through the castle and the bond screaming danger so loud it felt like her chest was splitting open. Lloyd was already gone from the chair where he'd taken to sleeping, their unspoken compromise after the nightmare conversation. His presence had become as familiar as breathing. Corinne threw on clothes and ran for the hall. Chaos greeted her. Wolves in human forms sprinting through corridors, all carrying weapons that looked medieval and probably were. Vera appeared from nowhere, grabbing Corinne's arm. East wall is breached. Shadowborn, at least 40 of them. Where's Lloyd? Leading the main defense. Vera pressed a knife into Corinne's hand. You stay in the safe room. King's orders. I don't take orders from. The explosion cut her off. The entire castle shook. Screams erupted from somewhere below, high-pitched, terrified. Not warriors. Families. The lower residences. Vera's face went ashen. They're going for the non-combatants. Another blast, closer. Corinne could smell smoke now, acrid and wrong. Through the bond, she felt Lloyd's rage spike, felt him trying to be everywhere at once and failing because even Lycan Kings couldn't fight on 2 fronts simultaneously. Cade burst around the corner, blood streaming from a gash across his chest. They knew. They knew exactly where our families were housed. Someone fed them intel. The hidden passage. Corinne's training with Cade flashed through her mind. He'd shown her the castle's defensive weaknesses 2 weeks ago, including an old servants' tunnel that connected the lower residences to the forest. It had been sealed for decades, supposedly. The one behind the old kitchen. If they breached that, it's a straight line to the families with no defensive positions. Cade swore viciously. I need to get Lloyd. There's no time. Corinne was already moving, Vera's knife gripped tight. How many guards on the lower level? 4. Against 40 Shadowborn. Vera moved to block her path. You can't. I can buy time. I know that tunnel system. I mapped it looking for escape routes. The irony wasn't lost on her. Get Lloyd. Tell him where they're really hitting. He'll kill me if I let you. He'll kill you if those families die. Corinne met Vera's eyes. I'm not helpless. Cade trained me for this. To survive, not to fight. Same thing. She pushed past, running for the stairs. Behind her, she heard Vera barking orders into a radio, Cade's boots pounding toward the east wall. The bond yanked tight, Lloyd's attention snapping to her like a leash. She felt his panic, his rage, his desperate need to get to her. Felt him pinned down by the main assault force, too far away to help. Trust me, she thought at him. For once, trust that I can do this. His response came back wordless but clear. Don't you dare die. Before we continue the story, please tell me in the comments section where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you are hooked in and enjoy the story, because tomorrow I have another wonderfully interesting story for you and I don't want you to miss it for anything. The lower corridors were filling with smoke. Corinne grabbed a wet cloth from a supply closet, pressed it to her face and kept moving. The screaming was louder now, punctuated by snarls and the wet sounds of violence. She rounded the corner to the old kitchen and found exactly what she'd feared. The hidden passage stood open, the ancient stone door blown off its hinges. Shadowborn poured through, rogues with yellow eyes and twisted features, barely recognizable as having once been human. They moved like animals, all instinct and hunger, herding terrified pack members toward the courtyard. Toward a kill zone. 4 guards fought desperately at the choke point, trying to hold a line that was already breaking. One went down as Corinne watched, throat torn open by a rogue's claws. She had Vera's knife, 3 weeks of training, and absolutely no chance of winning this fight. But she didn't need to win. She just needed to slow them down. Corinne's eyes tracked the passage architecture, the load-bearing beams Cade had pointed out, the structural weaknesses in stone that had stood for centuries. The explosion that had breached the door had already compromised the integrity. One more blast in the right place would bring the whole thing down. She spotted what she needed: a gas line running along the wall, old iron piping that probably should have been replaced decades ago. And there, mounted on the wall, a torch that still burned despite the chaos. Corinne grabbed a bottle of cooking oil from the ransacked kitchen, her hands steady despite the terror trying to claw its way up her throat. She'd built bombs in worse situations in that basement studio when Mom's boyfriend had gotten too handsy and the locks weren't enough. Some skills you never forget. She worked fast, rigging the bottle with cloth, soaking it in oil. The bond screamed at her, Lloyd's presence getting closer but still too far. The Shadowborn were pushing through, overwhelming the remaining guards. Corinne threw the makeshift bomb. It hit the gas line exactly where she'd aimed. The explosion knocked her backward, ears ringing. Through the smoke and fire she saw the passage entrance buckle. Stone groaned. Beams cracked. The tunnel collapsed in a roar of ancient rock and flame, burying the breach under tons of rubble. The Shadowborn on this side of the collapse were cut off from reinforcements, manageable numbers now. The ones still in the tunnel were trapped or crushed. Corinne lay on the floor, lungs burning, and smiled through the pain. She'd just saved Lloyd's people, with absolutely no help from his power or his protection. The bond blazed white-hot as Lloyd finally reached her, and the last thing she heard before darkness took her was his voice, ragged with fear and fury and something that might have been pride. "You magnificent, reckless, impossible woman." Chapter 8. Corinne woke to Lloyd's voice cutting through fog and pain, low and vicious. "Don't care about protocol. I want every Shadowborn in that warehouse dead by dawn." She was in the medical wing, she realized. Sterile white ceiling. Beeping monitors. The acrid smell of antiseptic mixed with smoke still clinging to her clothes. Her ribs screamed when she tried to sit up. "Don't." Lloyd was beside her in a heartbeat, hands gentle as they eased her back down. His face was streaked with ash and blood, none of it his, and his eyes held that wild edge that said his wolf was close to the surface. "You have a concussion, smoke inhalation, and you re-cracked 2 ribs. But I'm alive. The family's safe. Because of you." His hand cupped her face and the bond pulsed with something too big for words. 18 people made it out alive because you collapsed that tunnel. You bought us the time we needed. You sound surprised. I'm terrified. Lloyd's laugh was broken. You ran toward an army of rogues with a kitchen knife and a death wish. Do you have any idea what it felt like through the bond, knowing you were in danger and I couldn't reach you? Probably felt like every day since you kidnapped me. But Corinne's hand found his, held tight. "I wasn't trying to die. I was trying to win." "You did." Cade's voice came from the doorway. He looked like he'd been through a war, which fair he had. "The families are calling you a hero. The warriors are calling you insane. I'm calling it even on our bet." Before we continue the story, please tell me in the comments section where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you are hooked in and enjoy the story, because tomorrow I have another wonderfully interesting story for you and I don't want you to miss it for anything. "What bet?" "Whether you'd last 30 days. His grin was genuine for once. "You lasted, Reyes. And you earned your freedom fair and square." The words hit like cold water. Freedom. The thing she'd been fighting for since Lloyd blocked that hospital exit. The thing she'd built every wall to protect. Tomorrow was day 30. The trial period ended. Lloyd had promised to let her go if she proved she could survive without him. She just collapsed a tunnel on 40 rogues using nothing but human ingenuity and spite. That wasn't proof, nothing was. I'll give you two some privacy, Kate said, reading the room. The door clicked shut behind him. Lloyd's thumb traced circles on her palm, the touch grounding despite the bond trying to claw them closer. You did it. You proved you don't need my protection. I proved I can protect myself. There's a difference. Not to our agreement. His voice was carefully neutral, but the bond bled pain. A deal is a deal. Tomorrow, if you want to leave, I won't stop you. I'll make sure you have money, security, a life anywhere you want to build it. You'll be free. Free. The word she'd worshipped like a religion for 17 years. Corinne looked at Lloyd, really looked at him. At the man who'd kidnapped her but given her choice. Who'd promised protection but taught her to protect herself. Who'd stood guard through nightmares without demanding anything in return. Who'd respected her enough to let her run toward danger instead of locking her away. She thought about walking out of this castle, going back to a life where she only had to trust herself. Where she was safe because she was alone. Where no one could abandon her because no one ever got close enough to matter. It sounded like the loneliest prison imaginable. The warehouse, Corinne said abruptly. The one I found. You're hitting it tonight. Lloyd blinked at the subject change. Yes. Why? Because Marcus Thorne will be there. The Shadowborn leader. The one who orchestrated this whole attack. She pushed herself up despite the protests from her ribs. And you're going to need someone who thinks like a human to find him. Corinne, you can barely stand. I'm going with you. No. Yes. She swung her legs off the bed, fighting dizziness. Not because you're forcing me. Not because the bond is making me. Because I'm choosing to. Because those rogues hurt your people and that makes them my problem too. Your people, Lloyd corrected softly. They're calling you their queen, Corinne. Whether you wear the crown or not. I'm not, she stopped. Looked at him. At the hope trying to hide behind resignation in his eyes. At the bond burning bright between them, no longer feeling like a chain but like a choice she was finally ready to make. Ask me tomorrow, Corinne said. After we end this. After I help you burn that warehouse to the ground and make sure Marcus Thorne never hurts anyone again. After I choose to stay not because of some trial or some bond but because I want to. Lloyd's hand caught hers, pulled her close enough that their foreheads touched. And if you change your mind? If tomorrow comes and you still want to leave? Then you let me go. Like you promised. She kissed him soft and fierce. But I won't. I'm done running, Lloyd. I'm ready to fight. With you. Beside you. As my mate. As your partner. She pulled back, met his blazing cerulean eyes. The queen thing we can negotiate. But yeah. I'm staying. The bond exploded between them and Lloyd kissed her like she'd just handed him the world. Outside, the pack began to howl, a song of celebration that shook the castle walls. Corinne smiled against Lloyd's lips. She'd walked into this castle a prisoner. She was leaving this room a queen. By choice. Chapter 9. The warehouse burned like a funeral pyre, orange flames licking at the night sky while sirens wailed in the distance. Corinne watched from Lloyd's side, his arm wrapped around her waist more for support than possession. Her ribs were taped, her lungs still raw from smoke, but she'd refused to sit this one out. Marcus Thorne's body lay somewhere in that inferno, along with the records of every human he'd turned, every life he'd destroyed. It was over. We should go, Lloyd said quietly. Before human authorities arrive. The pack melted into the shadows, 50 wolves disappearing into the urban darkness like they'd never existed. Lloyd's SUV was the last to leave, Corinne tucked against his side in the back seat, watching the warehouse collapse in on itself. How many did we save? She asked. 12. Vera's voice from the driver's seat. 12 humans locked in cages halfway through forced transformation. The healers think most of them will survive. Because you found them, Lloyd added. Your data led us straight there. Corinne closed her eyes. 12 lives. Not enough to make up for the 17 who'd disappeared, but something. A start. Before we continue the story, please tell me in the comments section where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you are hooked in and enjoy the story, because tomorrow I have another wonderfully interesting story for you and I don't want you to miss it for anything. They drove back to the castle in silence, the bond humming content between them for the first time since Lloyd had blocked that hospital exit 29 days ago. Tomorrow would be day 30. Tomorrow the trial period would officially end. Tomorrow everything would change. The pack was waiting when they arrived. Not just the warriors or the court but everyone. Families. Elders. Children. They lined the courtyard in the pre-dawn darkness, hundreds of wolves in human form holding torches that turned the ancient stone gold. "What's this?" Corinne whispered. "Your coronation." Lloyd's hand found hers. "If you'll accept it." Cade stepped forward carrying something wrapped in midnight silk. When he unwrapped it, Corinne's breath caught. A crown, delicate silver worked to look like wolves running in an eternal circle, moonstones set at each cardinal point. "The Queen's crown," Lloyd said. "Worn by every queen who stood beside a northern king for the past 800 years. My mother wore it. My grandmother. Every strong woman who chose to lead beside her mate rather than behind him." Vera appeared with a second bundle, a cape of deep crimson that matched Lloyd's, but tailored for Corinne's smaller frame. "Queens don't kneel in this pack," she said, voice carrying across the silent crowd. "They stand." Corinne looked at the assembled pack. At faces she'd come to know over the past month. The families she'd saved. The warriors she'd trained with. Cade grinning like a proud older brother. Vera who'd gone from jailer to friend. And Lloyd watching her with those impossible blue eyes, the bond singing between them waiting for her choice. She could still walk away. The deal was honored. She'd proven she could survive without him. But surviving wasn't the same as living. Corinne stepped forward. "I have conditions." Lloyd's smile was sun breaking through storm clouds. "Of course you do. I'm not some ornamental queen who sits on a throne and looks pretty. I work. I train. I have a voice in every decision that affects this pack." "Agreed. I'm keeping my last name. Corinne Reyes Eldridge. Both of us. Equal partners. I'd be insulted if you didn't. And if I screw up, if I make a mistake, you don't lock me away to keep me safe. You trust me to handle it." Lloyd crossed to her, took both her hands. "I trust you with my life, my kingdom, and my heart. Always have. I was just waiting for you to trust yourself." Corinne looked at the crown Cade held. At the cape that would mark her as equal to the king. At the pack waiting for her answer. She'd spent 17 years believing that needing anyone made you weak. That trust was just another word for victim. That the only safe place was alone. She'd been wrong. "Yes," Corinne said. "I accept." The pack howled, the sound shaking the mountains. Lloyd lifted the crown, placed it on her head with hands that trembled slightly. Vera draped the crimson cape across her shoulders. And Cade, breaking protocol entirely, pulled her into a crushing hug that made her ribs scream. "Told you you'd last," he whispered. "Didn't think you'd end up keeping the king though." "I'm not keeping him. We're keeping each other." Lloyd's hand found hers again and together they turned to face the pack. The bond between them wasn't a chain anymore. It was a foundation. A choice made and remade with every breath. "Your queen," Lloyd announced, his voice carrying to every wolf present. "Corinne Reyes Eldridge. Who collapsed a tunnel with nothing but human ingenuity and spite. Who found our enemies when we'd given up looking. Who chose to stand with us when she could have walked away free." The pack dropped to one knee as one. Warriors, families, even the children. A show of respect given freely, not demanded. Corinne looked at Lloyd. At her partner, her mate, her equal. "So," she said smiling. "What do queens do after coronation?" His grin was all wolf. "Whatever they want. You're free now. Finally, actually free." And standing there in the dawn light, crowned and claimed and choosing to stay, Corinne realized he was right. She'd spent her whole life running from cages. She'd finally found freedom by choosing to stop. The pack rose as one, and Queen Corinne Reyes Eldridge, fierce, stubborn, unbreakable, walked into her new life with the Lycan King at her side. Where she belonged. By choice. Always by choice. Thank you for watching this story. Hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow I have another wonderfully interesting story for you and I don't want you to miss it for anything. God bless.